So welcome back everyone. In today's video I want to talk about what hash maps are and also how they work. I will also explain some terms that follow with hash maps, such as what a collision is and how we go about fixing them. Hash maps are a key value lookup. This means that when we are inserting a new element in the hash map, we give it both the key and the value, and then we can retrieve this value, for example, associated with Tom, very easily. In the hash map, both the key and the value can be any kind of data structure we want. In my example, I had the string as the key and some student class as my value. You can think of hash maps as an array, right? They simply use an index to retrieve the data we want. But how do we jump from a particular string to a valid index in an array? That is where hash functions come in. It takes in a string and then returns an integer. We will then take this integer and remap it to an index. Now, the reason why we don't use the hash code as an index is because the array we want to store the values could be much smaller than the value given by the hash code. For example, we don't want to have an array of 3 billion just because there are 3 billion possible hash codes, for example. Now note that it is possible to get the same hash code even with two different strings, since there is an infinite amount of strings but only a finite number of hash codes. Now the additional problem that can also occur is since we remap hash codes to an even smaller number, two different hash codes can be remapped to the same index. This is what we call collision. There are two ways we can resolve this, but the most common one is called chaining. If you want some homework, then I want you to go and look up the second way of doing it and tell me about how it works in the comments below. Now, chaining is very simple. It's just whenever there is a collision on a certain index, we will just create a linked list on that index and insert the key/value pair in the linked list. If you don't know what a linked list is yet, I have a tutorial on how it works and you can check it out and then come back to this video. So this means that now this won't really be an array of students, but an array of linked lists containing the student's data. So let's take, for example, that we have a student's key/value remapped to the index 0, but it's already taken. We would just create a linked list at index 0 and simply place this new value to the linked list. Now note that this new linked list will actually include two pieces of data. If you remember from my tutorial, I said that linked lists can contain one piece of data and also the address to the next node. That was kind of wrong because linked lists can contain as much information as you want. Don't forget, you are the one who's programming the linked list, so you can just, program the node however you want. So this means that it will contain the key, the value, and then the address to where the next node is. That's how a linked list works. One problem with this, however, is that if an excessive number of collisions occur at a specific position, a linked list will just become longer and longer and longer. Thus, accessing its elements will take more and more time. Now, the runtime complexity. For hash maps, it sort of depends on what kind of assumptions we make, where in many cases we assume we have a good hash map, meaning as little collisions as possible. During an interview, for example, we assume we have a good hash map. For these kind of hash maps, it is used constant time of 1. If you don't know how big O notation works, I have also created another tutorial if you want to check it out, and then of course come back. But if we have a bad hash function, let's say we produce a lot of collisions and so on, we can also say it is linear time of n. But during most time we use constant time, since in the real world we would make sure that we have a good hash map. And that is all I had to show you guys today. Hopefully you learned something new, and if you have, obviously make sure to subscribe, like, and share. If you haven't learned something new, well then, thank you for watching the whole video at least. If you have any tutorials you would like me to talk about, then please leave them out in the comments. Until then, see ya.